Hey, everybody, it's Sam from Manifest. We're back with another episode of Behind the Brands. This story started when I broke my leg and had a lot of time to sit on a couch and do nothing but maybe try to make more friends in the business. So I'm joined today by Cristina Suarez Krumsick from Isetta PR. She has an incredible background. I can't wait to share her story with you. And just before we started recording, she was asking me how my leg was. So thanks for asking. I'm much better. And I'm now in a chair and not in a lounger.
Good. Are you fully mobile now?
Yeah, I'm doing deadlifts and everything.
Oh, amazing.
I'm on an aggressive program.
I kind of loved how in your last interview, you just had the crutches in the background. It was a very chic background and just
It's like they're here, but they're no longer here. They're gathering dust as they should. But, that's planned obsolescence for crutches is really a thing.
Right,
their best life is just gathering dust in a garage, waiting for the next issue.
Yeah, big disaster.
Thank you very much for asking. I'm well on my way. But enough about me. You have such an incredible backstory. You started in one place, you went to another, you brought some friends and a husband on board. Tell us about your journey from the world of publishing, hat tip, that's where Christina's background is, all the way to founding Isetta and working with so many incredible brands that you work with today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be chatting today. So yeah, I mean, when I first graduated college a long time ago, I, like many, was like, I want to move to New York City and work for a top 5 publisher. And I made that real. I ended up at Simon & Schuster, actually in this rotational program where you start in managing editorials, kind of the least sexy, and then editorial, marketing, PR, and you kind of, actually, I've never made the connection, but I think that starting that was so foundational for me in terms of seeing the whole picture. But anyway, so I started at S&S, and I was there for about 5 years. At the same time, I also wrote a cookbook. Don't Google it. It's embarrassing.
I'm going to link to it.
Oh my gosh, please don't. That's a whole other story, but I wrote a cookbook with HarperCollins. So I was kind of back and forth in Midtown, Rockefeller Center vibes with
know it well.
My day job at Simon & Schuster and going to my publisher at HarperCollins. So I was seeing really both sides of the coin, the PR side, the talent side, the author side, design, all of it. Eventually made my way to a smaller publisher with really beautiful, intentional, coffee table worthy books called Artisan. And then started at a PR firm. And when I was at that PR firm, I was kind of shook because I felt like the service was existing in a silo. So I had come from, touching all of these different facets of the business, all of this, that goes into one product. And at this PR firm, it was very much here's what I got, pick up the phone, call the New York Times, spit it out the other end. And, there's a lot of value in that, but it was one of those firms that it's your network is your net worth. And that's where it starts and ends, it was just it was not completely strategic. And I felt it didn't make a ton of sense. So I tried to make a lot of change while I was there. And eventually I started Isetta with this idea that I wanted PR to be this holistic service that really considered everything and wasn't I don't know, I say this all the time, but I feel the service has a really bad reputation of smoke and mirrors. It's kind of murky, you don't really know what they're doing all the time. And you just are writing these checks and you don't know if there's a return. And I remember, I got interest from a friend of mine, Natalie Abell, who is the founder of Backdrop, a direct-to-consumer paint company. And I was I could just try to do this here at the agency I am, or I could just start on my own. And I ended up starting on my own at that point with really that foundation in mind, how can I bring a super holistic, honest service to these brands, and also just work on brands that I love. I just wanted to really love my clients and products. So that's the short and long story.
We have so much in common there, because I've approached some of the similar values and kind of mission oriented business design, but from a more design and manufacturing and operationally focused standpoint. But you're so right. There's so many parts of every service industry that just tend to be black boxed, and information is sort of hoarded. And as a consumer of those services, and as a consumer of PR services in the past, I just felt like, where am I? Like, so we have a joke, like one of our cultural values at Manifest is, where's my stuff? It's a weird cultural value to have, but we like it because it really pinpoints how important it is for everybody to understand just where they're at and what's going on around them. And what's the point? If you're wandering around a landscape without a map, it's really disorienting and difficult and not quantifiable. And I think that's the danger for businesses, that
For sure.
to consume something as expensive as design services or growth services or PR services, and not really be able to put a thumb on what your return is.
Right.
There's a real misalignment, I think, with many providers in that regard. It's good for them, for you not to know where you're at, and like really bad for you as a brand. So let's fix that.
It's interesting too, because like when I think back, like in publishing, right? Like when you're deciding on the cover of the book, like the way it's going to look, the name of the book, the subtitle, like every detail, like there's a salesperson in the room, there's a marketing person in the room, there's a PR person in the room, like the people responsible for bringing it to market, right? So like it makes no sense that a PR person should have no say or like deep interest in the foundation, like the foundation of the brand, right? Like you should know it, and you should be like, really like breathing the same air before you start telling the New York Times about it, right? So I think like even when I think back to those meetings, even as like a PR assistant, like people just are like more in the loop when you're in-house, right? So once you go out and have these different vendors and the information is all sliced up, I think it can become like pretty disjointed and like not add a ton of value. But so
okay, so I want to dig into that. Tell me how you and your business navigate that tactically. Like for the folks that are listening, how can they get better at that, or do that, or look for signals of it if they're consuming the service, or maybe approach some sort of vertical integration, or approach a partnership like a company with Isetta, who has those values and can kind of, expose your client base to them. Give me some deets.
Yeah, on like what we do, how we do it. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just like, honestly. So like we have these amazing brands on our portfolio, and they are, media darlings, and they check all of the boxes of like great photography, great brand, really sharp positioning, really substantiated positioning, an incredible founder who's like maybe an influencer, or, like they have all of the makings of like a brand will be in the press, right? And I think what happens is we get a lot of inbound, a lot of RFPs from brands that are like, hey, like I want PR services. And I have this launch coming up and I'm really excited, like, let's go for it. And instead of being like, great, like, here's our package, and, like, let's start October 1st, we're kind of like, well, sometimes that's the case, right? But more often than not, we're like, well, you're not ready for that, right? Or like if we hopped into it, it wouldn't go well, like this wouldn't end well. So we kind of, and obviously we have like a category expertise. We focus only on food, beverage, and home and design. So I can't say the same for like a fintech startup, right? Like I don't know what it requires, but I know in doing this for a very long time, over 15 years, like I know if those boxes are checked, or like halfway checked, or like how much work needs to be done before you get like what I consider like the cherry on top marketing service, which is earned media. Like it has to be earned, right? So what we do, it starts in those like new business conversations. Honestly, we just have honest conversations where we're like, you're in a super crowded category, like every single one of our brands, and probably every brand at this point is. And we need to have a sharper angle. We need to see more distinction. Like we need to either like work on the brand or work on positioning or whatever it might be. So we kind of like have these honest conversations from the jump, like even just meeting someone like for the first time.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. Some people are like, who are you? Like, get out of here. But more often than not, it sparks like a really big conversation, right? Or like we'll, align from the beginning, and they're like, yeah, we've been thinking about that for a while, and like I just met this designer and we're gonna like work on our VI a bunch, and like maybe you guys can help us with messaging, and we can like, so it becomes just like right away more of like a foundational collaborative conversation, like even before we've like signed an
Yeah.
agreement.
Well,
So
and I think what I'm hearing is that in those conversations, the no is as important as the yes, because there are, as a small business, and some of the businesses that we support, you probably have the same characteristics. Some of them are venture backed, some of them are bootstrapped.
yeah,
Bootstrappers, you got to protect them,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
if there may be willingness to pay for a service like this, and they may be hearing, from people like you and me that are tasked with sort of like trying to help and dispensing business advice and, and all of that stuff, like, here's a good thing to do. And as important as it's a good thing to do, it's, well, when is that? And what are the signals that I, as a small bootstrapped consumer goods business or, or durables business or CPG business, can look for in my fundamentals to say, yes, it is the right time. And I think there's some financial characteristics to that around cash flowing and, an approach to profitability, or being profitable and being able to reinvest in what you're starting to build. And then there's also, as you're calling out, some slightly less tangible characteristics, or maybe they're tangible to someone like you who can really diagnose visual design and verbal design and art direction and photography, and kind of bring those qualitative components to bear, while the quantitative fundamental components are together signaling it's the right time to spend on X, whether that's PR or performance marketing. Like, don't do performance marketing if your website isn't optimized, because you spend money on people who are going to walk away. What does it take to optimize your website? And so on and so forth. So I think it's so important that you're having those honest conversations, really ethical conversations around how it's right to support a business. I never got that
wrong. I mean, like,
Go ahead.
branding and positioning are the most common or most obvious, I guess, like from where we sit, just because our service categories like are positioning, design, and PR, with like 80% of our business being PR. But like when we do the positioning and design, it's in service to optimizing PR, which is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
I have to say, like right now we're doing more positioning, we're getting more positioning inbound than we are PR, which is really interesting. Like I think people are starting to like catch on to this idea that like you can't put the cart before the horse. Like you've got to like know who you are and what your values are and like how you should speak before you like call the media. But I think, financial timing is also very important too for us. Like in our ideal client profile, like one of the bullets, and it has to be, is like, can you sustainably afford our fees, right? Because like it's just the reality of it. Like if you want to have a relationship with an earned media service provider, and they come to you and say, okay, like, well, we can work for you for 1 month, and when we can pause it and put it back on, and like, it doesn't work, right? Like this is a service that requires like a constant deposit of knowledge, and you have to like dip into that repository of knowledge at all times in order to like fit into the media's cycle. Like it's like you just can't start and stop. So like that is an investment, right? Like it's a big job. And like if someone is bootstrapped and they're like, we can do this for 3 months and then we'll pause and then we'll do it, like it's just not going to work, right? Like so there's a lot of implications and a lot of conversations that we have from the beginning and ongoing, honestly, because you can say the same thing to me once we're like a year into the relationship and you want to launch like a big ice cream collaboration in January, right? And like, that's not the right time, not for us anyway. I don't know. So I think, that mentality like just sticks around like with every single one of our clients,
Right.
like for the entire
Yeah.
partnership.
Yeah. And being able to dispense business advice in the same breath is a component of that. So you said something that was really interesting to me, that I want to dig into, because I think let's define PR, like for
Okay.
this audience. Like,
Yeah.
how do you define PR, what it is, and what are you looking for as a successful quantitative or qualitative business outcome from your services? Flagging, this question was not on the list that I shared with Cristina before we got
If I don't know how
but
to
I feel
define
like you
PR,
will answer.
if I don't know how to define PR, we have a big
Right,
problem.
we're
Don't
in
worry
big
about
trouble.
it. We actually have this deck. I'd love to share it with you, just for your feedback. But we have this deck called PR Defined in 2023. We're gonna have to update it soon, but we update it all the time. It's very dynamic. It changes all the time. And so our first like slide, right, the big definition right now is strategies and stories working in lockstep. So it's like, it used to be just stories, right? It used to be like, okay, Sam is really cool. She has a sneaker collection. I know an editor that writes about sneakers. Like, I'm going to call them and make that connection. And there's going to be a story about Sam's sneaker collection. Like, that's not how it works anymore. I actually had a CMO, or no, she's a CEO of a pretty well-known pet food company. And she is so brilliant in a million ways. And she started her career in PR like a really, really long time ago. And I remember we were talking through a strategy and she was like, I just think you're complicating it. Like you find the writer that is interested in the thing and you just reach out to the writer. I was like, but so anyway, you need to have the story, right? Like foundationally, of course, you need to have the story. Like all of our founders and our products that we represent, like they have amazing stories and we're like stoked about them. So like that is still a thing. The strategy part needs to be in play too, right? Like I said, you need to have like the right photography, you need to have the right like access to the right people. If there's an amazing founder, but like they don't want to talk to you, then you can't tell their stories. That's a big part of it. You need to have affiliate links, right? Like if you have any direct to consumer presence, like we need to be playing the affiliate game. There's a lot at play. So I think, the short story is stories and strategies in lockstep. And I think to answer your question about like KPIs and I guess like how the results come into play, a successful manifestation of the strategies and stories working in lockstep.
We never do this.
Is when we're getting results, right? And we're getting a mix of results. Like there has been, I'm sure you've seen like a big boom in like performance PR, right? And that's PR that only plays bottom funnel. And that makes a ton of sense because there's a million listables out there, right? Like, the top 5 dog foods, what to buy your mom for Christmas, or, how to like dress up your whatever. So I think that, for us, that's a big focus. We have experts in affiliate, we have experts in commerce pitching. The way you pitch a commerce writer, an editor, and a manager are all different. Like it's very nuanced, but there's also like this kind of top of funnel play that's incredibly important, right? Like big brand awareness. There's influencers, right? There's like thought leadership that is going to be like hugely influential for these companies to continue to raise money and like have really tough people have confidence in them, right? So we like to think about, we just coined this term internally, like the magic 8 ball. And it's like basically 8 pieces of press that are all dynamic. So like 2 thought leadership pieces, 2 like more bottom funnel commerce pieces, 2 influencer, like niche Substacky kind of things, and 2 like brand features, right? Where it's like just about the brand, whether it's like in a design publication or F&B, depending on what it is, surrounding a launch. And we think that creates kind of like a snowball, and then it goes in every direction and we get more and more of it over time. And then you have a brand that is my favorite thing to hear about any of our portfolio brands, like, oh, I see that brand everywhere, right? And it means like we're all doing our jobs right. Like they're doing their job right, we're doing our job right, and it's kind of like hitting you from every direction. And like I think that's what success is, right? Like sometimes it doesn't always work, right? Like you don't have enough of the two-way street with the client. You don't have every
Mm.
strategy in place, but if you do, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Well, and you hit on something else interesting in there, which is there's what to do PR as a solopreneur, and that's the I'll find an editor thing. And
Yeah,
what's appropriate for a scaling brand that's looking to get a professional resource to help. And that's where the strategy conversation really comes in. And if you're paying someone to just say, I'll reach out to some editors for you, then you're not really paying for PR strategy the way that you ought to be. You're missing
right.
piece. And it's a viable and valid path. I mean, I found editors like, but it was just me and it was sweat equity and I was free to myself.
It's so
And so
time
that was
consuming.
appropriate. And
Right.
when you start to look at for a scaling business, I'm going to start to pay for some of the services that I need in order to get leverage on my time. Cause I'm only one people, or maybe now I'm 5 people, maybe now I'm 15 people, but still we're small and on that growth path. We don't have 150 employees yet. Then you have to really take into account how prepared those professionals are to adapt into your own internal strategy, which will be holistic, right? Like if you're growing a business successfully,
Right.
you got to be doing it with some roadmap, even if it's only known to you. And if
Right.
the people across the table that you're, buying services from can't integrate with that, then the leverage that you want will never come. Right? Then it's a really short lever. Like,
Yeah.
you won't be able to, no matter how much pressure you put on it, it's not gonna lift anything.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it's so nuanced, and it's one of those things that like I think people cheapen the service a lot. They're like, like I just want to. There's a freelancer though that's going to charge me like $500 a month, and I'm like, what kind of person like values their time like that? Like this is like a quality and quantity game. Like you can't if you blast out to all of these different types of editorial mediums that we just talked about, the same pitch, like it's going to have the opposite effect of what you want, right? Like aside from like that big like Pepsi advertising mistake, there's very few services that will actually like kill your brand, right? And like PR can if it's handled poorly. So it always like shocks me how people are like, like this should be like so cheap. I'm like, you want people that are smart doing this. Like, this is
Right.
not something to put in like, someone's hands who like doesn't know what they're doing. So, and obviously like the relationship part of it, like having a bunch of people on your team that like are geeky about what they're pitching, like I have one employee in Mexico City and she can like talk about spirits like in a way that I've never heard anyone talk about spirits. Like it's just like so over my head, but like she should be pitching spirits brands. Like that
Right.
makes sense. So like I think that it's one of those things that like it's nuanced, it's complicated, and like you just got to trust the partner to handle it diligently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I feel like it's a controversial service, so my goal is to just
You're
like be good at it, and like be honest and have integrity and like provide a ton of value. So
Yeah. Well, and the value you're providing is to founders. And so I would be remiss to acknowledge, not to acknowledge in this conversation that you are a founder. And you're helping people overcome obstacles and challenges like you've done that too.
yeah.
Let's dig into that a little bit. Tell me about some of the biggest hurdles that you faced in building Isetta from day one and what that looked like for you to what it is today. And tell us what it is today too.
That's a good question. I mean, so like I said earlier, I started the company on my own essentially as like a freelancer, right? With like 2 brands. And I got more and more like interest and I started hiring and it just kind of snowballed in a really organic way. And I didn't really know like what I was signing up for. Like I had worked with a couple VC backed brands at my previous firm. I was the VP there. I like had some, high pressure clients and that kind of thing. But like I didn't know the kind of like bubble I was entering actually at all.
Yeah.
Didn't know that generally VC backed clients are under a ton of pressure, right? And like that pressure translates to all of their vendors, including me. So
Yeah.
I have to say I'm glad that I was like kind of learning as I was going, because I think if I knew the archetype, I would have probably like run in the other
Yeah.
direction. And I've always worked with like really smart, awesome founders. Like all of my clients, there's not one client that we work with or have worked with that like I don't have a ton of respect for, but I think I didn't quite realize like how much pressure they were under, right? And like therefore how much pressure I would be under. Um, and so I don't know. I don't know. Like the honest answer is like it's been incredibly stressful, like and rewarding, like
Yeah.
very rewarding. But like there have been so many moments where I'm like, this is like too hard, like this is
Yeah.
like and then only because my standard is like super high. Actually, it's funny. The other day there was one of our clients had a launch and I was sitting next to my colleague Ivy, and she started here as an intern and is growing and like just doing so well. And she got a couple media placements on their launch day and like they were great. And she was like, she got one and she read the headline and it was like as we wanted it. And she was like, oh, it's like it's not good enough. And I was like, oh my God, I created a monster. But like I think you have to have that high standard because like that's what they're doing, and like
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think that's when I think about the challenges, like there's been like little hiccups here and there, like our email system completely like shut down the day I had my son. Like there have been like big moments like but like when I think about it like
Best
holistically,
day ever.
oh my God, literally like I remember holding him, I was breastfeeding him and my husband was like, so can you talk to Tracy because they need your approval? I was like, what are you gonna say? Like our banking system went down at the same time. I had to like go to Chase. Like it was a very weird thing. But anyway, there's a lot of that I think that everyone deals with, but like the biggest thing is really like getting into startups without like knowing what that meant exactly,
Yeah.
in terms of like pressure. It's been tough.
Well, speaking of pressure and not knowing what you're getting into, but needing great people around you, and your husband handing you the phone on your son's birthday. You, like I, work with your husband. His name is Jeremy.
Yeah.
This. Tell us about what it's like to work with your partner, like a business and life partner. And it's something that we've discussed a lot in my conversations because it obviously defines my work existence very substantially. Tell me your version of it. How's it been?
This is really new. So I have not actually, like, aside from my girlfriends, like talked too much about this. So I hope I don't butcher
Are we
anything.
girlfriends now? Or we
We're
can do
definitely
this on another conversation if you want. We can.
no. I'm just thinking like what the real answer is to this.
Yeah.
But like, so he started like less than a year ago. So it's like January, not even a year.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, honestly, I don't know how you felt about this. I want to hear from you on this. But I was kind of like grieving, like not having my own thing anymore. And I think like that was something I didn't expect. I was like, super relieved that like I officially had someone on board that I knew just gave a shit, and like cared as much as I did and like just had my back. And like if I don't have a co-founder, like I've always like paid career coaches to like give me validation and criticism. Like I feel like I really wanted that partnership, and I feel like so lucky that he's on board for that reason. But one kind of unexpected feeling I remember feeling, and I did tell him this, was like I'm kind of like can't believe it's not just like my own thing anymore.
Yeah.
That's really evened out because it still is my own thing, you know, like it didn't change to like Jeremy and Company, you know, and it was never Christina and Company. Like I'm not an influencer type, you know,
Yeah.
but like that was one kind of adjustment for me, is just being like him knowing the ins and outs of my world and how I like talk and pitch and like who I am on this side of in this side of things.
Mhm.
Um,
It's like a new
but
knowing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like weird, you know, like he does a lot of sales, and like, I mean, that's the majority of his job. Like we get a lot of just people reaching out, and like they seem really interesting, but I can't exactly like understand how we would work with them, or like, you know, even companies like yours where like we really should know each other, but it doesn't feel like I can dribble the ball forward like in a linear way. And before I was just like would send a really nice note and like connect on LinkedIn, and like that was it. But like he really explores and like goes there, and he's like in sales and biz dev. But at the beginning he would like staff my sales calls, or he would staff our account calls to kind of know more about the service. And I was like, I feel completely exposed. This is crazy.
Funny.
But honestly, he's so good with feedback. He's so good at giving me feedback. He's really good at like complimenting me when I feel like I needed a compliment and I didn't know it. And I don't know, I don't want to be cheesy, but like I overall like I'm so incredibly grateful to have him. I think my biggest thing is like I'm not used to having like we're service providers, you know, like I'm on every single account. Like I'm not like the day-to-day person, but like I see everything. Like sometimes clients are like, are you going to be involved? I'm like, even if I'm not on the call, like I'm so involved
Sure.
in a way I really even shouldn't be that involved. Like I'm very involved. And so I'm not used to having like a biz dev person that doesn't like directly do the work, the core work
Yeah.
that we do. Like it feels like a luxury. So like if anything, I have a little bit of like imposter syndrome. I'm like, do we deserve that yet? Like, are we ready for that kind of role? I mean, he's proving that we're ready for it. He's busy all day, but
Right.
you know,
You are.
yeah.
Well,
But no,
and
it's been good. I'm grateful.
I think to abstract some of what I'm hearing from what you're saying, when a founder, you and I are each solo founders for a moment, at least,
Yeah.
takes that risk for themselves and puts the trust in themselves to like manifest, bring something into the world, like by sheer force of will.
Yeah.
I think that there's something that you're hinting at that is, it's not just about a husband or a partner or a co-founder, or it's really anyone else coming into the mix and realizing that it has to become at some point a trust fall in order for you to grow. Right. Because as a single founder, you just know that by sheer force of will, you will get all this shit done. You know, you're just gonna do it. And the list is in your head. And that is really different than externalizing those things in the name of growth and scale, both personally and for your business. And I think that was a scary moment for me too. Like, oh my gosh, I cannot do all of this alone, because the inflection point of starting a business is I can do this. And the inflection point of growth is I can do this, but I need help.
I think the key thing is growth, right? So like I remember again back to that, you know, one of my first clients, Natalie Abel, backdrop, co-founder with her husband. They started it. She was like the creative genius, he was ops, and they kind of divided and conquered. And it was like, it still is this like amazing partnership. It's so complementary. I remember texting her when I was thinking about Jeremy joining, and I was like, you know, I need someone to really, he's very technical. He's always been at tech companies. He was at Roku before this in sales, but previous to that, he was an engineer. And I was like, I really need someone who can go like deeper into affiliate, because we can like pitch commerce writers, but like dealing with the platform and like tinkering with like product feeds and that kind of thing.
Totally.
Like it's not our world. So I need someone to do that for us. And I think he would be good at it. And she was like, well, you could just hire someone to do that. And like, I had hired some people to do that previously, And she was right, you know, like that didn't make a ton of sense.
Mm.
We're zooming out and we're talking about growth. Like, who's somebody that can help me grow, like grow the affiliate business, grow the positioning business, grow the PR business, integrate it all. Like, that's what he's doing, right? Like, so in addition to, like, you know, tactically going on share a sale and like approving stuff and changing
Right.
inventory,
Oh, he still has to do the other job, is what you're
right,
saying.
of course. Like, we're small. We're not like,
You didn't hire that person.
right.
Perfect. So we're gonna add a
Right, like do the real
job
things.
description.
Right. His job description is actually like, I'm pretty like type A organized, so it's like pretty clear. And anytime I like cross a boundary, like now he's handling Boolean queries, I'm like C5A in the org chart. And it's like, okay, it's fine.
That's classic. Oh, you're so much better organized than I am.
I mean, where I started at Simon & Schuster was like owned by CBS, so you kind of had to like fill out a form to like sharpen a pencil. So that's like really stayed with me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an organized person, as my pillows imply, but I just throw things at Brian. I'm like, sweetheart, can you make these codes for me?
Honestly, I feel
like
like everything I give him is like, he has his own lane, but then it's like any extras that just give me like a little like mental kerfuffle, you know, is like what he gets. I'm like, I can't open this like separate document, check it against 4 other things. Like, you do that. Like, that feels like too technical. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, the growth piece. I think that like describing it in that moment to my friend as like an affiliate manager was not accurate, right? It's like, it is biz dev, it's growth. Like, how can we take this and make it bigger without compromising it? Like, and that's his job. That's our job.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and for better or for worse, you're a family, to put all of your eggs in one basket together.
It's
scary. And you both have to be, you know, irreplaceable in your own way, doing really chunky growth things in your own way that could not be shared, you know, isn't a task that could just be delegated to somebody that has, you know, less skin in the game, frankly.
Exactly. And, you know, I think that it's interesting because for me, it's, you know, I'm like the daughter of Cuban refugees. I have like crazy scarcity mentality. Like, I am not a risk taker. So when I started Isetta, I also took over maternity leave for an experiential marketing role at JW Marriott. I was like not ever willing to like take a pay cut, you know, and like, I'm really grateful that I'm that way. And I think it's really served me because, like, for lack of a better word, I think if you're not like a hustler, you just shouldn't mess with any of this. Like, that is anytime someone comes to me and they're like, I have a great idea for like, you know, a convertible poof or whatever. I'm like, love the poof idea. But like, are you going to kill yourself for at least a period of time?
Right.
And not forever, but like for a period of time. I think that is just the truth. I don't know if that's like PC, but I think
I think it's really valuable because there are so many people with wonderful product ideas, and that's an idea. And the question I think that we all should challenge ourselves with, if we're considering getting into the space, is like, do I have an idea or do I want to run a business?
Right.
The idea is like such a tiny fraction of running the business. And if you're not passionate about that, then that doesn't mean the idea is a bad idea, but it might mean that you need another kind of help. You know, find a partner, put yourself in an accelerator model, find another way if you're so invested in your idea coming into the world, which is a valid want.
Yeah.
Separate that out from, do I want to run a business? And do I want to run a business that has absolutely no boundaries? Because the business doesn't care, right? Like, it just needs what it needs. And
it doesn't care your epidural hasn't worn off yet. The bank doesn't care.
Yeah, like I did my first Amazon back in the gear days. I did our first Amazon listings like pregnant with a laptop on my stomach and a baby sleeping in one arm. And I was typing with, you know, my left hand. And my mother-in-law was like, what are you doing? Yeah. I was like, well, I just,
like, no one else is going to do it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think like, obviously, you grow and you scale and there are other people to do it and there are people that you trust, but like at the beginning, it's just not the case, right? Like it's never going to be the case. So I think that, I don't know, it's like, it's not for the faint of heart. No, that's super overused, but and it's funny because like I don't know how you feel as a service provider, you've been on both sides of the coin, which is really cool.
Mm.
But I always feel like our clients like don't remember that we're a business at all. Do you know what I mean? Like and I get it. Like if I was like paying the bills, like, and I was like, this is my vendor, this is my agency, whatever, like you just don't remember that. Like, I think founders, and I want to have like a panel. We have this working together series that I should send you some info on, where we just bring like founders and media together, and we have these panels and they get like super geeky and they're really interesting. But like, I think service provider founders, like, I mean, it's a different breed of human, but yeah, it's a hustle.
It's a hustle. The hustle's real. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect point to wrap up. I want to do this with you again. Your backstory, by the way, is so gut-wrenching and incredible, and everybody deserves to hear it. So love to do another call with you where we dig into the Cristina before Isetta.
Oh man, so funny. No, it's good stuff. I feel like, I don't know, things are status quo, and like, I don't know how you feel right now, but I feel like the last 12 to 18 months have been like, they've rocked our world. Like, just in terms of like, we have the same type of client, but in terms of just like this capital not coming into like this orbit as much.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I had this call with a founder the other day, and I was like, describe your dynamic between these two co-founders. And he was like, well, I'm like really up and down, and he's really like even keeled. But I really like to think that the up and down like is what takes us to new heights, because, I freak out, I make a big move, and then like he brings me down. And I was thinking like, that's so synonymous with how I feel with like this economy right now. Like, it is like unpredictable, but like we're being so resourceful and like trying new things and taking on new things, and like it's working, right? So I hope to think that like on the other end of it, we'll just be like bigger and better.
Yeah.
But it's been crazy. It's been wild.
Total ride of a
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you again. Let's do it again. It's such a
Cool.
pleasure. Have an awesome weekend.
Awesome. You too. Thank
All
you
right.
again.